Maja Bosnic is a well-known economist, senior international development professional, passionate gender budget expert, advocate, and speaker. She has long experience in international development and has led teams and complex projects. Maja is a woman committed to demanding diversity, equality, and inclusion in everything she does. By having gender consideration, we're not only coming closer to achieving gender equality, but we're also making budgets better, more transparent, impartial, and effective, she says. Having worked with this concept in her native Bosnia and Herzegovina with UN Women, she now works with countries all over the world to help governments make their budgets more appropriate.
I'm really happy to be in Pristina, and I know that many of the speakers will say the same, but let me be first, at least in the round of the next four. I come from Bosnia, so I feel really, No, I come from Bosnia. I don't live there for many years, and I will tell you where I live because I will bring some of the examples from the countries that I lived and work in. Anyway, great to be here, and I hope Rajko just introduced budget as an enemy or a friend. My own experience, when people ask me, what do you do? And I say, I work with budgeting, I lost them. I lose the people because most of my friends are not particularly interested when I say budgeting. And I hope that in the next, I have 20 minutes, I'm very mindful of time. I hope that I will bring you with me on the journey and you will say, of course, this all really makes sense and budgeting is a super hit topic. Okay, it's a big task I have, judging from the views that I'm getting. So, we didn't know. This is the sentence that I have heard millions of times in my professional life. We didn't know. We didn't know in a genuine surprise. We didn't know that the women will not get any funds for agriculture given by the World Bank. They will all go to men in Bosnia. And the Ministry of Agriculture was like, oh, we really didn't know. We didn't know that boys are dropping out of school in such a rapid rate that this is shocking. And we didn't know. We also didn't know that despite the fact that in Ukraine, most of the people who work in civil servants are women, that most of those who are sent abroad to be trained are actually men. We didn't know any of that. And why didn't we know that? Because generally, when we are working with budget and public finance, and I will talk about that now, we don't think the gender equality issues are important. What does gender have to do with budget and finance and money? You know, budget is very technocratic, bureaucratic. We calculate, we do good accounting, and gender equality, you know, is other topic. Somebody else will take care of that. Of course, I'm here to tell you it's not true.
When we talk about gender budgeting, we are really talking about unpacking very technocratic, very bureaucratic budgetary processes and making them work better for people, making them work better for all groups of people. So gender budgeting is really acknowledging that we don't work with one homogeneous universal human, but that we all have very different needs in a society, and they are usually a reflection of gender gaps. So gender budgeting is putting this together, and it's really acknowledging different needs of different group of people in the budgetary decision making.
When you say needs, what do you specifically mean?
Well, I mean that because of existing gender gaps, you know, and they are still very prominent here on Kosovo, on Balkan, but globally, we are still not coming close enough to gender equality in many different fields, which is putting us in very different places, women and men in different socioeconomic positions. So we need to acknowledge these different needs when we are planning the budget. And I can maybe give you several examples. We were just recently coming here discussing with a colleague of mine how, for example, women tend to not own land. And if you do not take that into consideration when you are, for example, planning the grants for agriculture, you will automatically discriminate this whole group of women. So there are very different needs depending on our well, I would say gender place in a society. So women and men tend to, and women and men in very different groups, tend to be in a very different places when it comes to their needs that need to be satisfied through the budgetary programs.
So now the complicated slide comes, but this slide is super simple in its heart, because this is how you are planning your budgets. Just to rewind it a little bit back. So basically, in every single budget process, like our own, let's say that we are planning the funds for the next year, we are first calculating how much money we will have, and now the visual comes. So proud of this one. So anyway, so we are planning how much money we will have, and in the case of the country, it's from your taxes and our taxes and fees. Then the second step comes, we are basically planning how will that be distributed. So we are prioritizing, and our ministries are saying we need money for education, we need money for infrastructure, and then budget gets adopted. Just a question for you. Do you know who is in fact in charge of adopting the budget? Who is having the final say in how the money in Kosovo will be distributed? No? It's always the parliament, because budget is a political instrument. So it's really how we are saying what is the most important for Kosovo today. It's the parliament saying, Ministry of Finance is preparing the budget, but parliament says yes or no. Then we go into the spending. I recently make a joke, this is my favorite part, but nobody laughed, so I thank you. So we go into spending, we want to spend that money according to priorities, and then we go and evaluate. And that is how your own personal budget works, ideally. You plan what you will have, you spend, and then you assess, okay, did I really spend for education or something else? Or going out? Yeah, I'm talking to younger crowd, so that's what I'm hoping. In my case, it's no longer for going out. In any case, so this is how it should work. So what's wrong with that? We still don't know. So when we are planning the funds like this in every single country around the world, we are not taking into account traditionally the needs of very different group of people in a society. And my colleague before me, he was talking about gender biases and gender equality, and he was mentioning that. But I really want to ask you now, and it's not a big group. I don't want to put you on the spot, I'm on the spot, but you are a little bit too. So do you know, out of all people on the planet, we have roughly 50% of women, 50% of men. Do you know how many of them are in parliament? You can just do the wild guess. Is it 50-50? Is it, how many percentage of women? 37. Very good, precise, not correct guess. So it's 22% of women that are leading this world, because this is who is making decisions. So when people come to tell me, and I get that a lot, you know, gender equality, aren't we past that? Why are we talking about gender equality? And now AI, what does it have to do with it? It has a lot to do with it, because we are not there yet. I love this picture. Please just look at this picture for one brief second. This is who runs the world. And if you think it's not very diverse, and if you want to find women, you will find them because they are not wearing black. Otherwise, you wouldn't see them. So this is the reality of where we are with gender equality. And then, how many, well, I wanted to ask you this question. So every third woman is a victim of violence as we speak today. In fact, recently I came back from a country where every woman is victim of violence. Every single woman suffered violence in Sierra Leone. I will let that sink in, and then I go to, yes, 80% of the land globally is owned by men. And this is also very important because I myself participated in analyzing a budget program. I'm coming to budget, don't worry. Budget program in agriculture, and all the funds were given to only one group, and this is men only because we didn't collect this data in our agricultural funds. Okay, I want to ask you, do you know what is the gender wage gap globally? So we know that one of us, one group is earning a little less. So women are earning a little less. How much less? Will Raiko again come with 37% is the answer for everything. 15%. Please work with me. 20%. There? Anything? 100. Women are making 100% less than men. Oh wow, that's a radical attitude. I will get back to you. also incorrect one, but we can work with that. So basically, gender wage gap still remains.
The concept of gender budgeting emerged 30 years ago from Australia, and then it spread, and now we are having more than 90 countries around the world that are doing some form of gender budgeting. And this is really to acknowledge that we need to understand who are we providing our services to. So in Balkan, many ministries and many organizations, including international organizations, are supporting the work on gender budgeting. Here on Kosovo too. So UN Women is working a lot by supporting gender budgeting work. The Ministry of Finance is also involved. So there are, I would say, initiatives, but again, I would like to see more of that happening, of course.
You're not that satisfied, Brad?
Yeah, never.
Never.
Never, because there is always a progress to be made, and I think what bothers me is that we are still seeing really prominent gender gaps, including, again, in many countries around the world, and then we would have a very good laws, very good legislation. We all committed to gender equality, but too often, to my taste, it stays as a letter on the paper because it doesn't trickle down to the budget. And why I like to talk about the budget is because this is really the instrument for realization of all the policies. It's the money. Without money, it really stays at the only policy level. So what we are really trying to do is to acknowledge that there are gender gaps when we are planning our, for example, introducing new tax.
I understand.
And to acknowledge that not every person in a society will have equal benefit from either that tax that we are introducing or that maybe tax break. So we are trying to understand that we are having single mothers, single fathers, we are having displaced people, we are having people with disabilities, we are having also women and men in different positions.
And now I come to the slide that I hope every one of you has seen before, but if you don't, well, it makes my presentation a little more interesting. So, when we were analyzing budget programs, and now when I say budget program, this is every single expenditure. Everything that we see here is also funded from public funds. And whenever I come to the ministry, in any country, Indonesia, Macedonia, wherever, they tell me we don't discriminate, you know, we treat everybody equally. We open for applications so everybody can apply. And then this situation happens. If you really don't account for the different needs of different group of people because you don't think that gender equality is your job. You are, after all, finance officer. I'm also economist. So what we are really trying to do is not even this. Somebody is waving their head like, no, we shouldn't be. So this is really something that is called affirmative measure. We are trying to acknowledge that in my example, you know, in Ukraine, we have analyzed programs for tuberculosis and programs for HIV and AIDS. And the first thing when you do gender analysis of budget program, you account who is the patient, who is getting these funds, who is getting treated. In Ukraine, it was 80% of the patients were men, 20% were women. In this multi-resistant, I'm not a doctor, but this is the form of tuberculosis that is very hard to cure, and it's also very expensive. It's primarily men. However, when we do preventive measures, we treat only the sectors where women dominate, such as education and health. So what you need to do with your budget, with this money, is to give this support and make sure that men living in rural, remote area also get access to these services, which was not done. And I know that you are now wondering, how is this possible? It is possible because we don't take gender equality into account when we plan the budget. But ultimately, I'm walking, it's a really big stage. So ultimately, we want to get to the third picture. And the third picture is that we don't have people that we constantly need to support because we try to work on equality in a society. We don't have gender-based violence. We don't have gender pay gap. I would like to live in that society, but I don't think it will happen that fast. I will just give you one example, and then I will open up for all the questions that you might have, and I hope that you might have some. Just to tell you the following. Together with my colleagues, I have participated in analysis of budget funds again, in many countries around the world, and every single time when we do analysis of the program in education, in health, in youth, in infrastructure, every single thing that you might be thinking of, we see big gender gaps. Because if you don't intentionally plan the funds to close these gender gaps, they would rather expand gender gaps or leave the status quo. One example, I'm just thinking, shall I give? No, I already gave you the health example. I will give you the example of the budget program in Vojvodina. And it was the program to train young people for the future employment. So it was unemployment fund that was doing the trainings. And the trainings were, interestingly enough, in IT. So those were basic computer skill trainings and then advanced ones. And it was also web design. So the first thing when you do gender analysis, you analyze, okay, who is attending these trainings? When we did the analysis, we have seen that it's actually 70% women that are attending the trainings and only 30% men or young men. So if we would stop there collecting this data, we would think, okay, well, we want to support women in IT, so maybe this is good. But when we did further analysis, we have also realized that men were attending these advanced trainings in many more numbers, and they were actually the ones who would get employed. So it's really, really important that when we were designing this program, we acknowledge that there are groups who might not have access to our funds.
How data is helping your projects? You know that DOKU.TECH is very much into data, and that's basically the reason why you're here with me today. So let's talk about how data is improving your projects, maybe reaching your needs and your project easier.
Yeah.
Share us your experience.
So first of all, you can't do the whole gender budgeting idea is really focused on understanding what really happens with your money, what really happens with funds, and you cannot do that without having data. So the first step is to have sex disaggregated data. So to understand, okay, who are the people that we are reaching with these funds. More often than not, we don't have this sex disaggregated data. Sometimes we do, but we don't use them for any decision making. So this is the first step. Having data is absolutely crucial. So all of our reports, internal, external, they need to be sex disaggregated. But this is just the beginning of the journey. Having data is never enough. And I think my colleagues would agree with me. So it's the way we interpret the data, it's the way we do next steps with understanding and trying to get really the meaning of the data that we are collecting. And in the context of gender budgeting, that means that we are trying to understand what kind of picture is this data depicting and what is it reflection of. More often than not, we are seeing that it's a reflection of existing gender gaps in a society. So basically, we need to keep collecting good data. In the case of gender budgeting, data on first on the beneficiaries, but then all the other gender gaps. But then we need to really interpret them and understand what is it the consequence of.
We mentioned in the beginning that you work with teams, and would you like to share with us the most proud team that you work with, something they accomplished and that you're proud of?
Yes, that's an easy question, I have to say, because the closest to my heart is the project that we've done in Ukraine. And the team that we had 15 people. And when we started working, you know, when you work with gender budgeting, again, I just need to say this is very not, sometimes it's really hard to put these two areas together. So you either have gender experts or you have finance experts. And they sometimes speak different languages.
Right.
So my biggest achievement, and I wouldn't say it's my achievement, it's the team achievement, but it comes back to your question, is how this team learned together, because we had amazing gender experts who suddenly became also very comfortable working with budget and then became budget experts. Sometimes we are really afraid of engaging with budget. And on the other hand, we had our finance colleagues who used to work with Ministry of Finance or just with budgets before, and they suddenly, the way that they started to work when they understood what gender equality really means in the financial term, I think that was, to me, revolutionary. So I can't wait that team gathers around again and continues.
My really last thing that I want to say, because this is a conference where a lot of my friends and colleagues and speakers will talk about technology and new technologies and cutting-edge things. So I really want to say that I and John Nesbitt think that the most exciting breakthrough of the 21st century will not come because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human.
So you were giving us some data on gender inequality. So these data usually are gathered by some data gathered software. So the main point when you gather data is asking the questions, and the computer will give you the answers based on this question. So my concern here is, please don't get me wrong, I am a feminist, but I see also some parts of the community really being left very out. So my question is it a lazy question just to ask the computer, tell me the female and male
No.
difference? So are there other questions to ask the computer on data statistics?
I love that question. It's very well articulated, and I love that you are a feminist. I will give a round of applause for that. Yeah, people don't feel good to say I'm a feminist for some reason sometimes, so it's really highly appreciated. What you are asking is really the question of intersectionality. You are also trying, if I understand you correctly, the kind of questions that we are asking, first of all, not all women and men are in the same position. So it's not really enough that we even ask for only sex desegregated data. We do want to know more about the beneficiaries. So what I think, first we need to start with having basic sex desegregated data. Then we need to start to collect more. And we need to do this cross triangulation, et cetera, et cetera. So we really need to know if somebody is from rural versus urban area. We do need to know sometimes income status. We do need to know race. We do need to know disability status. This is all playing a game. And for example, just to tell you, this is not thing of the future. Canada is doing exactly that. So when you are looking at data in Canada's budget, you are actually able to derive all programs that are related to indigenous groups of people. So yes, so you are really right in asking, the questions need to be more complex than just basic sex desegregation.
How do you like so far the experience with DOKU.TECH?
Oh God, I mean, I'm here only one day, I need to say, but I have also do my homework, and I've also researched a bit about what you do. I'm very, first of all, I think for me it's amazing to be in Pristina. It feels like home. So however pretentious that may sound, but then I also think it's such a progressive and good way of putting young people together with the change makers. We are all change makers, I hope, for the better. So I really love the way you work. Yes, I'm just so humbled to be here.